during my sophomore year at Northwestern University, I accepted an invitation from my roommate Marcus Thompson to explore Riverside Psychiatric Hospital. It was a decommissioned facility. For 3 decades, it had sat abandoned. The building held disturbing historical notoriety throughout psychiatric and medical communities. There were extensively documented allegations of unethical experimental treatments, systematic patient exploitation, and inexplicable mortality rates that had precipitated governmental investigations and subsequent litigation involving thousands of former patients and their families seeking reparations for trauma inflicted through institutional negligence and criminal malfeasance. The hospital operated throughout the 20th century. It opened in 1923 as a progressive mental health facility. Over decades, it deteriorated into something nightmarish. The overcrowding was severe. Staff training was inadequate. Pharmaceutical protocols were insufficient. Experimental psychosurgical procedures left countless patients permanently incapacitated. The impact was devastating and irreversible. The structure itself was imposing. It was Victorian Gothic architecture constructed from deteriorating red brick. The edifice featured numerous wings sprawling across 12 acres of overgrown grounds. Ornate architectural detailing had been gradually consumed by environmental degradation and temporal decay. Everything was crumbling. Everything suggested abandonment and neglect on an institutional scale that was genuinely disturbing. Marcus and I equipped ourselves with rudimentary flashlights from a local hardware store. We felt young, invincible, adventurous. We navigated through labyrinthine corridors adorned with peeling institutional paint in faded greens and dingy beiges. Wall fixtures had deteriorated. Medical equipment lay scattered everywhere. Patient personal effects remained untouched. Institutional refuse covered the floors. Our flashlight beams reflected eerily off the linoleum, creating patterns that seemed to multiply and distort within the darkness in ways that felt profoundly unnatural. The facility's architectural design was deliberately labyrinthine. Architects had designed it to prevent patient egress during psychiatric episodes. They wanted complete institutional control over patient populations. This created bewildering successions of identical hallways, obscure passages, concealed staircases, and strategically positioned barriers that engendered substantial disorientation within contemporary explorers unfamiliar with the facility's complex internal topology. We possessed minimal architectural documentation. We relied predominantly on enthusiast forums and amateur exploration guides. We lacked comprehensive schematics. Navigation proved genuinely challenging. We ascended methodically to the 3rd floor psychiatric ward. The stairwells were deteriorating. Steps were missing. Structural integrity was questionable. As we moved deeper, I noticed something alarming. There were footprints in the accumulated dust and debris covering the floor surfaces. The footprints were fresh. They arranged themselves in deliberate patterns. Whoever made them moved methodically. They knew where they were going. The footprints suggested meticulous surveillance of the premises and intentional territorial delineation by an unknown occupant. The prints were unquestionably contemporary. They exhibited minimal dust accumulation. Their definition was crisp and sharp. Someone had traversed this forsaken corridor within the preceding days. Not weeks, not months, days. They maintained an active presence within this abandoned facility. The pattern demonstrated systematic movement through specific corridors and chambers. Whoever created these prints possessed intimate familiarity with the facility's spatial configuration. Marcus dismissed my concerns. He was young. He was arrogant. He attributed the footprints to vagrant occupancy or transient urban explorers seeking photographic documentation. Maybe maintenance workers, he suggested. My premonitions intensified exponentially when we penetrated further into the ward's interior. We encountered phenomena that defied rational explanation. A door we had deliberately secured behind us by engaging the rusted deadbolt was found ajar. We had definitely locked it. I heard the audible confirmation of engagement. The door's displacement suggested deliberate manipulation. Someone had deliberately manipulated it during our passage. They were monitoring our progression. They were selectively controlling our environmental conditions. Then we found it. Suspended from an overhead ceiling fixture in the psychiatric observation room was a noose. It was constructed from contemporary fabric material, not deteriorated synthetic fibers from decades of abandonment. This was new. This was crafted recently. The noose demonstrated deliberate craftsmanship, meticulous engineering, and professional quality construction. Someone had fabricated this deliberately. It was positioned at human neck elevation. It hung directly beneath the fixture. The implications were unmistakable. Someone possessed malevolent intentions. We were under constant observation. Symbolic warnings of violent intention surrounded us. We evacuated precipitously. We abandoned systematic documentation. We abandoned safety protocols. We retraced our pathway through the labyrinthine corridors with minimal regard for anything except escape. Primal fear dominated our actions. Pure survival instinct guided us. Upon arriving in my dormitory the subsequent evening, I discovered something beneath my door frame. It was a photograph. It depicted our vehicle from multiple strategic angles and perspectives. Our license plate was documented with forensic precision. The photograph exhibited sophisticated technique, professional lighting, expert composition, advanced depth of field manipulation. This was professional quality work. Our observer possessed substantial technical expertise. They possessed financial resources sufficient to procure professional photography equipment. The photograph's presence within my dormitory room suggested intimate access to restricted facilities. Our observer possessed legitimate credentials or possessed sophisticated skills in circumventing security protocols. Either possibility was deeply disturbing. Over subsequent weeks, experienced systematic surveillance phenomena. Individuals appeared persistently in my peripheral vision during campus traversals. They maintained suspicious proximity. They avoided direct visual engagement. Vehicles seemed to maintain suspicious proximity to my trajectory during automobile commutes. They followed at consistent distances. They manifested knowledge of my anticipated routes. Then came a correspondence. Anonymous letters arrived through university mail services. They contained personal information about my family members, my residential address, my parents' occupational information, intimate biographical details. One particularly disturbing letter contained photographic documentation of my parents' residential property. Multiple perspectives. My observer had traveled to my hometown. They had conducted systematic reconnaissance of my family members' living situations. This was premeditated. This was deliberate. This was terrifying. I contacted institutional security authorities. I detailed everything. I provided photographic materials and correspondence. I requested comprehensive investigation. However, they possessed insufficient evidentiary foundation to initiate formal criminal investigations. Bureaucratic protocols required substantial documentation of explicit threats before institutional resources could be allocated. The surveillance phenomena gradually diminished in frequency and intensity over subsequent months. I perpetually harbor suspicion that my observer simply modified their methodologies to evade detection rather than discontinuing their surveillance activities entirely. The psychological impact persisted substantially throughout my academic career. I experienced hypervigilance, persistent anxiety regarding unfamiliar individuals. I systematically documented suspicious activities. I reported them to law enforcement authorities. Years elapsed without incident, yet the fundamental violation of my privacy persisted. The knowledge that I had been subject to premeditated surveillance engendered permanent alterations to my psychological security and interpersonal trust mechanisms that persist into my present adult existence. I have never recovered completely from this experience. My professional partner David Shun and I sought escape. We needed to leave our demanding lives behind. We orchestrated a retreat to a secluded cabin nestled within the mountainous terrain of rural Montana. It was situated approximately 60 miles from the nearest metropolitan area. We anticipated rejuvenation from our exhausting existence in densely populated urban environments of the Pacific Northwest. We had been negotiating intensive business negotiations for several months. Both of us exhibited occupational burnout. We experienced diminished psychological well-being, persistent fatigue, relationship strain, and declining professional productivity that necessitated substantive intervention and restorative activities. This retreat represented our first extended temporal separation from occupational responsibilities spanning approximately 5 years. We deliberately selected a venue maximizing isolation and minimizing external distractions to facilitate optimal rejuvenation and genuine reconnection with each other. The proprietor's marketing materials were compelling. Professionally executed photographs, video tours demonstrating architectural features, testimonial submissions from previous guests expressing extraordinary satisfaction. Detailed amenity descriptions influenced our booking decision substantially. The online representation depicted the cabin as characteristically tranquil and aesthetically magnificent. It promised romantic rejuvenation within natural settings. We trusted the representation. That was our first mistake. Upon our arrival during twilight hours following an extended automobile commute spanning 10 hours, we observed an immediate peculiarity that engendered substantive disquietude. Surveillance equipment. It was positioned inconspicuously throughout the dwelling interior. Corners contained cameras. Furniture had devices mounted on top. Decorative elements concealed recording apparatus. Smoke detectors contained optical sensors. Wall-mounted clocks incorporated miniaturized recording apparatus. Electrical outlets featured concealed camera technology. The proprietor's accompanying documentation attempted justification. Previous vacancies experienced burglaries targeting personal valuables. They claimed vandalism events had occurred. Unauthorized occupancy incidents had happened. The security measures represented protective mechanisms for both guest safety and property preservation, according to their narrative. But something felt wrong. The surveillance seemed excessive. It seemed deliberately engineered for comprehensive coverage. Upon our initial inspections of the residential premises, we identified approximately 12 distinct surveillance devices. They distributed strategically throughout primary living spaces, kitchen facilities, bedrooms, and bathroom areas. The proprietor had engineered comprehensive surveillance infrastructure designed to capture occupant activities across substantially all environmental contexts. This wasn't security. This was invasive monitoring on an extraordinary scale. We expressed preliminary concerns. The proprietor's supplementary documentation characterized the surveillance systems as essential security infrastructure. Standard industry practice for isolated vacation properties, they claimed. Absolutely necessary for adequate protection against criminal activity in the remote region. The linguistic formulations were deliberately ambiguous. They obfuscated the comprehensive extent and invasive character of the surveillance protocols implemented throughout the facility. Throughout our inaugural evening within the residence, however, we detected sporadic disturbances progressively escalating in their unsettling implications. Inexplicable mechanical sounds emanated from the basement. Rhythmic thumping, electronic humming, periodic mechanical cycling. These suggested active operations of concealed equipment. The sounds intensified during evening hours. They manifested particular intensity during nighttime hours when environmental background noise diminished. The mechanical sounds manifested at unpredictable intervals. Psychological tension mounted through their unpredictability and mysterious origination points. We observed surreptitious displacement of objects, decorative items repositioned on furniture surfaces, doors we had deliberately closed discovered in open configurations, bathroom toiletries reordered despite our specific organizational arrangements. Individual disturbances might have been attributable to forgetfulness. Cumulative manifestation suggested deliberate environmental manipulation by external agents possessing facility access. Then came a video. An authenticated video recording materialized on David's mobile telephone through an unknown transmission vector. It documented David and myself during our slumber. It captured us from an indeterminate vantage point within our bedroom. This suggested intimate access to our most private and vulnerable circumstances. The video footage exhibited professional cinematographic qualities, sophisticated lighting understanding, expert camera positioning, focus depth optimization, professional editing procedures, 45 minutes of continuous footage, multiple camera positions potentially, unobstructed vantage points. This was premeditated. This was malevolent. This was absolutely devastating. David's initial skepticism transformed into substantive alarm. We commenced investigations immediately. We researched the proprietor's identity, historical background, criminal history. We investigated the rental company's legitimacy through online resources. The proprietor's telephone number proved defunct. The national rental company exhibited bewildering ignorance regarding our reservation. Different representatives provided conflicting information. They denied any record of our booking despite our confirmation documentation bearing the company's letterhead. Our reservation might have been processed through unauthorized third-party intermediaries. Fraudulent booking services, perhaps. We didn't know. The adjacent properties remained conspicuously uninhabited. Boarded windows, deteriorated infrastructure, extensive vegetation overgrowth. Extended abandonment seemed obvious. Deliberate property acquisition, isolation engineering, predatory selection of vulnerable victims, minimization of external witness testimony possibilities. This was deliberate. This was calculated. This was terrifying. We abandoned the cabin at approximately 3 o'clock in the morning. We fled with considerable urgency. We gathered essential personal possessions with minimal temporal investment. We navigated toward the nearest town, approximately 25 miles distant. We sought law enforcement contact. We needed to escape the populated environments. We arrived at the local sheriff's station in advanced psychological distress. We provided detailed narrative accounts. We presented video evidence. We requested comprehensive investigation. Law enforcement authorities examined the property under judicial authorization, utilizing forensic search warrants. The revelation was absolutely mortifying. The surveillance footage revealed systematic monitoring spanning multiple weeks across different seasonal periods spanning several years. Substantially numerous guests had been systematically monitored without cognizance or informed consent. The proprietor had curated an extraordinarily extensive collection of compromising material. Guests in varying states of undress, intimate situations, vulnerable psychological states. This suggested commercial exploitation on industrial scales. Forensic evidence indicated that the proprietor had disseminated footage through illicit channels, dark web marketplaces, subscription-based pornographic platforms, private distribution networks, substantial financial transactions. Federal authorities apprehended the proprietor following multi-jurisdictional investigations. They discovered 6 additional properties across 3 states spanning Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. This was systematic. This was profitable. This was monstrous. The investigation revealed approximately 200 identified victims. The actual victim count potentially exceeded 400 individuals across the proprietor's complete criminal history spanning 2 decades. Many victims remained unaware of their victimization. The proprietor maintained sophisticated operational security procedures. Notification challenges surrounded victim awareness. We were devastated. We were violated. We were traumatized. David eventually terminated his consulting career. He relocated to rural regions. He sought substantially less demanding occupational contexts. I endeavored to maintain professional continuity while processing psychological ramifications through ongoing therapeutic intervention. We both underwent specialized trauma counseling protocols addressing privacy violation victimization. We engaged with civil litigation processes seeking damages. We gradually attempted to reconstitute our sense of personal security and interpersonal trust that had been fundamentally compromised. The experience engendered permanent alterations. We changed. We're still changing. I was relocating, Seattle to Charlotte, a cross-country journey, approximately 2,200 miles spanning multiple days. The transfer assignment required sophisticated route planning, strategic temporal scheduling, and accommodation reservations at intervals throughout the transcontinental journey. I drove alone. I wanted solitude. Interstate 40 through northeastern Arizona became my nightmare route. This section represented one of the most remote and isolated segments of the entire transcontinental pathway. Minimal cellular telephone connectivity, reduced emergency services availability, sporadic law enforcement patrol frequency, extended intervals between populated communities. The environment created relative isolation and minimal external intervention capability. I was vulnerable. I didn't realize how vulnerable. The individual presented himself requesting assistance. His countenance was obscured by a weathered hood. His comportment radiated desperation. Tattered clothing, physical deterioration, apparent nutritional deprivation. He appeared genuinely distressed. He maintained non-threatening body positioning. His behavioral patterns suggested authentic humanitarian circumstance rather than deliberate predatory posturing. I made a fateful decision. I let him in, against my better judgment and accumulated professional experience regarding personal safety protocols. I permitted him to occupy my vehicle's passenger compartment. I intended to convey him approximately 40 miles to the next municipality where he indicated previous employment connections. I provided him water. I facilitated bathroom facility access. I engaged in conversational exchange intended to establish rapport. I was trying to be compassionate. I was making a grave error. His conversation manifested disturbing characteristics. His discourse proved remarkably evasive. Narratives featured internal inconsistencies. Contradictory elements manifested consistently. His commentary oscillated between superficial friendliness and subtle, threatening undertones. Cryptic utterances referenced my particular vehicle trajectory patterns, my occupational classification, my psychological vulnerabilities, biographical details regarding my family members. How did he know these things? He referenced my residential address in Seattle, specific street names, residential architecture descriptions, neighborhood characteristics, surrounding commercial establishments. Information I had disclosed to absolutely no one during our abbreviated acquaintance spanning 40 minutes. He knew my father's occupational responsibilities within engineering industries, my mother's professional involvement within educational institutions, my younger sister's academic enrollment at the University of Oregon, my parents' vacation trajectory to Hawaii 6 months previously. This information could only have been obtained through deliberate investigative research protocols. He had investigated me, thoroughly, systematically. His demeanor oscillated unpredictably. Superficial friendliness, genuine interest in my biographical circumstances, then menacing undertones, cryptic commentary, Meaningful pauses pregnant with implied threat. Subtle physical positioning adjustments suggesting preparedness for sudden aggressive action. The psychological tension became suffocating. The atmosphere felt oppressive. I realized my passenger harbored substantive information obtained through investigative research rather than coincidental acquisition. I was trapped with someone who had studied me. I redirected toward a populated rest area, fueling facility, restaurant establishment. I executed this maneuver with deliberate intention of extracting myself from this situation and appealing to facility security. I discovered with mounting horror that my door mechanisms had been incapacitated. Child lock mechanisms, potentially supplementary electronic lock augmentation procedures. The locking mechanisms were inoperative. My repeated attempts to disengage the apparatus failed. I was trapped. My passenger had subtly activated these mechanisms during my inattention. This was deliberate. This was premeditated. He had done this before. He revealed a photographic dossier. Extraordinary thickness. Hundreds of individual photographs. Professional photographic quality. Systematic organization. Elaborate indexing. Multiple categorization schemes suggesting meticulous organization protocols. I felt sick. The collection encompassed my residential property in Seattle from multiple perspectives and temporal intervals. My residential entrance photographed specifically. My parking area patterns documented. Landscape architecture configurations captured. Neighborhood pedestrian traffic patterns recorded. He had images of my employment location. The corporate office building exterior. Parking facilities. Perimeter security protocols. Vehicular access point configurations. Pedestrian traffic patterns across multiple temporal periods spanning different seasons. Then came family documentation. Extensive photographic series of my family members' recreational activities. My parents' routine patterns. Their departure and arrival times. My mother's regular attendance at community fitness facilities. My father's recreational golf engagement. My younger sister's campus movement patterns. Her social gathering locations. Each photographic series accompanied meticulous handwritten annotations. Specific dates. Precise temporal information in military time specifications. Geographic location coordinates. Cryptic commentary incorporating psychological profiling observations. Vulnerability assessments. Behavioral pattern documentation. Temporal opportunity evaluations suggesting exploitation planning. My heart nearly stopped. This was premeditated. This was systematic. This was absolutely terrifying. I deployed my vehicle's emergency horn. I engaged rapid cycle horn activation. Substantial auditory disturbance filled the commercial facility environment. I orchestrated aggressive vehicular maneuvering, deliberate steering adjustments, environmental instability threatening potential vehicle collision scenarios. Highway patrol officers observed our disturbance. They responded with immediate physical intervention. They interrupted what subsequently proved to be a serial predatory perpetrator responsible for multiple disappearances throughout numerous contiguous states, spanning approximately 15 years of continuous criminal activity. His operational methodology exhibited extraordinary sophistication. He cultivated technological accessibility to victim vehicles through his ostensibly innocuous presence. GPS tracking apparatus, remote access systems, electronic lock manipulation protocols, cellular communications interception technologies rendered vehicles subject to his manipulative control. He systematized comprehensive reconnaissance preceding victim targeting. He monitored prospective victim behavioral patterns. He identified psychological vulnerabilities through observational assessment. He constructed detailed victim profiles incorporating vulnerability vectors and exploitation opportunity classifications. He maintained meticulous documentation through photographic materials, written assessments, behavioral analysis materials, and temporal tracking records. Prosecutors characterized his criminal enterprise as extraordinarily prolific. 47 confirmed victim fatalities across 6 states spanning Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Utah, and Arizona. Substantially numerous additional victims survived with considerable trauma manifestations. His residence contained a comprehensive command center dedicated to victim surveillance. Wall-mounted maps documented victim locations through color-coded marking systems. Chronological timelines displayed criminal activity interconnection patterns and targeting methodologies. Victim psychology profiles exhibited detailed behavioral pattern observations. Sophisticated technological infrastructure incorporated satellite internet connectivity, radio frequency monitoring equipment, cellular communications interception apparatus, and computer systems demonstrate he maintained systematic video documentation of his criminal activities throughout his criminal career spanning approximately 2 decades. Digitally encoded materials stored on encrypted storage media utilizing multiple redundant backup systems. Evidence preservation on an extraordinary scale. Contingency protocols everywhere. His formal confession revealed disturbing information. Childhood trauma exposure. Family dynamics characterized through neglect and abuse. Emerging psychological disturbances during adolescent development. Initial criminal experimentation during young adulthood. Progressive refinement of criminal methodologies through iterative trial and error processes spanning decades. He expressed satisfaction regarding his victim selections. He appeared to maintain minimal remorse regarding his actions. He articulated sophisticated rationalization frameworks attempting to justify his conduct. Law enforcement authorities charged him with federal crimes encompassing interstate trafficking, kidnapping, murder, torture, and conspiracy protocols. They pursued capital punishment recommendations. Multiple life imprisonment sentences without parole eligibility across numerous jurisdictions followed. His case manifested as one of the most comprehensive serial predator investigation procedures in contemporary law enforcement history. National media attention. Academic criminal psychology research focus. Legislative attention regarding transportation security protocols. The experience fundamentally altered my psychological security frameworks. I experienced persistent hypervigilance manifestations. Lasting trauma responses regarding interpersonal trust mechanisms persist. Personal safety assessments continue manifesting substantially within my contemporary existence. I'm still not the same person. I don't think I ever will be.